Indianapolis Colts are going all in, trading 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner at cornerback. And look, first glance, I'm not the biggest fan of this trade. I like aggressive trades. I like big swings. I just don't think this is enough to put you in legitimate contention. If this was the move to take you from fringe contention to elite contender, yes, 2 first-round picks is fine. 2 first-round picks are kind of irrelevant if you're picking in the 30s or in the late 20s. And if this is legitimately giving you a chance, like what the Rams did with all those first-round picks, winning a Super Bowl and being a dominant Super Bowl winner in and of that. My issue with this trade is I think there's a very good chance the Colts are first-round playoff exits. I think there's a very good chance that Daniel Jones looks like Sam Darnold, where in the big moments he can't, in Pittsburgh, when he goes to Kansas City, when he makes it to the playoffs inevitably, I think this is going to be a stinker. And what do you do then? When you've got all these high-paid non-quarterbacks, you don't have draft picks. This move says we believe Daniel Jones is that guy. We believe he is a top 10 quarterback, and we think we can win it all this year or next year. Now, if you don't win the Super Bowl, is it a failure? No. By no means am I saying that. If you go into Kansas City or if you go into Buffalo or wherever, if you play in the divisional round of the playoffs and lose 30-31, it's like that's not a failure. If you lose to the Mahomes or the Allen or the Burrow or the Jackson, that's not a failure. What a failure is if you lose in the first round of the playoffs 13-28, the offense is anemic, and now you have no way to solve the quarterback problem. That is my issue with this trade. I just have a different view of this Colts team than the Colts front office does. They obviously think that they can go all out, and they think that this is the move to put them in contention with the elite teams. I just disagree. And if they're right, awesome. If they're wrong, then they'll be fired. So that's just how it works. 2 other trades. The Seahawks got Rashid Shaheed. Excuse me. He's got a tricky name. He's an explosive playmaker. He's more of kind of that slot guy, that flex guy. He'll occasionally break off a crazy 70-yard catch, but for the most part, Rashid Shaheed is kind of a nothing burger for the Seahawks. The Seahawks are a very good team, so it's not like they needed a massive player to get them over the hump. The Cowboys getting Williams from the Jets, defensive tackle, Quentin Williams. And I like what the Cowboys are doing. You know, it's weird because I'm not a fan of what the Colts are doing, and the Colts are a much, much better team. The Cowboys are kind of building that frisky 8-9, and I know they've got one tie, so they could finish 8-1, which kind of feels like what the Cowboys will do. But this defensive line, they're stopping the run. They've got a good pass offense. This Cowboys team feels kind of like a tough out for sure. Now, I don't think they're going to go anywhere in the playoffs if they make the playoffs, which we're about to talk about in a second. But this feels like kind of they're building, these non-marquee names. They're not trading away a lot of draft capital. They're just kind of making the right moves, if that makes sense, which sounds crazy for Jerry Jones-led team. Now, in terms of the Jets, we kind of got it. Well, we were still in the Jets because Quentin Williams was also on the Jets, but Sauce Gardner, they traded away. They sold the team, which is crazy because they just got their first win. You think that they'd be on the up and up, but regardless, the Jets have 9 first or second round picks in the next 2 years. They are going all in on 2028 in the future. Look, I don't mind it. I think the Jets probably should have done this last year. I think they should have, when you could have got more value in the offseason for all these guys, when you could have maybe gotten some players in this year's draft. So by the time it's 2028, 2029, when you've got new cap space because you're not paying these guys, when you've got the draft picks. But now because the draft picks are going to come next, or I guess this year, it'd be next year, 2026, and then 2027, it's like, man, by the time those guys develop, it's 28, 29. We're waiting a while. So it would have been preferable if they would have gotten these picks this season so they could start to develop and start to build a new future. Regardless, I like the moves. I don't think this Jets team was a couple signings away, a couple trades away from competing or even making the playoffs. As you guys can see, they don't have a quarterback. They don't have much talent. Their defense was okay. More so mediocre. But look, at the end of the day, this Jets team sucked. They need to rebuild. This is the start of their rebuild, and I don't mind it. I think being able to recognize if you're competing, if you're kind of in no man's land, which I think the Colts were in, and if you need to rebuild quickly, I think that's important, and that's what the Jets were able to. That's what the Jets were able to do. Next topic, the Chase Brown smack talk of his own team. Now, a few Bengal players, after their insane 47-42 loss against the Bears, were going insane. They were freaking out, and understandably so. You're down 14 with 2 minutes left. You score, you go for 2, you get the onside, you go up. I mean, absolutely insane. and then you give up a massive touchdown. I mean, it's crazy how bad the Bengals defense is. They could stick me out there, and I could probably cover just as well. I'd be cheaper, and I'd give some effort. So maybe they could sign me. Regardless, look, I don't like it. I don't really care about the situation. I don't care how bad the defense is. And in the Packers example with Micah Parsons wasn't as bad. I'll agree with you, but the Chase Brown one was unacceptable. Micah Parsons, it's kind of iffy. I'd probably be like, hey, could we do that privately? Chase Brown's was insane. This team is falling apart at the hinges. You can't talk about your teammates like that. Like, at the end of the day, the season's not over. You're still competing for the playoffs. Joe Burrow's going to come back. You can't talk about your teammates like that. There's no... I get they're not playing well. This isn't going to help. It's not like... people talk about, I talked about the Cardinals head coach, hitting his player, and I've talked about a few of these examples. It's not like they're not trying to make it sound like they're just like, oh, if I just give them a pep talk, like this is Little League. No, this is the NFL. They're trying. They don't have the personnel. They don't have the schemes, and maybe they just took their foot off. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but I don't think calling them out like that publicly makes a lot of sense. I don't think it's going to be great for team chemistry, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Bengals will turn around because of that. We'll have to see. And the next topic is the Ravens and the Bills are back. Now, the Ravens, my Ravens, as you can see behind me, I'm a Ravens fan. Ravens are 3-5. Still have a lot of work to do in a very congested AFC, which we'll talk about in a second. The AFC and the NFC playoff picture. The Buffalo Bills are back. The Buffalo Bills are back. And look, they always beat the Chiefs in the regular season, but regardless, they have looked very good in the last 2 weeks, blowing out a Panthers team, which ended up beating the Packers. And I don't like to do that, jiu-jitsu explanation but look, the Panthers are a good team, and the Bills blew them out at home, at the Panthers' home, and then they beat the Chiefs. So the Bills are looking good. They dropped one to the Falcons on Monday Night Football a couple weeks ago. The Bills are looking good. The Ravens are also looking good. They're two formidable foes. And a lot of people were talking about these two teams being like, oh, I think the Colts, I think the Steelers, I think the Patriots, I think those are the three teams. No, at the end of the day, we know the three teams. It's the Chiefs, it's the Bills, the Ravens, and the Bengals to some degree. Now, I am going to talk about the playoff picture for the AFC because it is insane. I legitimately, since I've been a football fan, I have never seen such a loaded playoff picture on either side, AFC or NFC. The AFC is insane with the level. There isn't the elite team. There isn't the New England Patriots of the, I believe, 2009 season where they went undefeated. There's not that level of a team, obviously, but there's a lot of good teams. And the playoffs will be super interesting. There's not going to be 12-point spreads. There's not going to even probably be touchdown spreads. Most of these spreads are going to be razor thin. But playoff picture, you get 7 teams in. You get 4 division winners, 3 wild cards. And look, this is tough because I wrote down the teams that I think are guaranteed to make the playoffs, meaning if their quarterback doesn't get injured or if something berserk doesn't happen, they will make the playoffs. Bills, Pats. I don't know who's going to win the division. I'm leaning towards the Bills. Vegas has the Patriots, actually. But regardless, if the Bills win their next game against the Pats, then they'll probably win the division. If the Patriots win their next game against the Bills, then the Pats will have that division tiebreaker as well as another win, and the Bills will have another loss. But both those teams are going to make the playoffs. In the AFC North, I think the Ravens are definitely going to make the playoffs. Look, Vegas agrees. Most people predicting this think the Ravens are going to make the playoffs and win that division. It might only be at 10-7 or 9-8, but I think the Ravens will win that division. The Indianapolis Colts, although I'm not a big believer in them, they already have 7 wins. Look, if you win 10 games, you're probably going to be in the playoffs and probably win your division. Then we've got Chiefs, Broncos, Chargers. Now, those are my locks because those are all teams that, if any of those 7 teams miss the playoffs, you'd be like, really? Maybe the Chargers out of all those because of their offensive line issues. But I think the Chargers are going to make the playoffs. I think the Broncos can win their division. Broncos could be the 1 seed. The Chiefs could be the 1 seed. A little bit dicey. Chiefs will need to beat the Colts for sure because they've already lost to the Bills. But those 7 teams are assuredly going to make the playoffs, right? And if one of those 7 misses, the Ravens maybe lose the division to the Steelers and miss the playoffs entirely. The Colts, I don't see a way they miss it. Maybe the Texans or Jags get hot, and we're going to talk about that game in a second. Chiefs, Broncos, Chargers, maybe Chiefs and Broncos, beat the Chargers and the Chargers miss it 9-8 or something. But those 7 teams seem like locks. Now, we're going to talk about the 4 teams that are also pretty good that feel like they should also probably make the playoffs. We have the Steelers, who could make the wild card and or win the division. You know, they've got the tiebreaker over the Colts if the Colts go on a bit of a slide, and that's a 7th seed tiebreaker. Steelers could win their division very easily if they beat the Ravens twice or even if they split with the Ravens. You've also got the Texans and Jags, who Texans, you know, they're not looking hot, but if they beat the Jags this week, then they're looking like pretty lively, a 500 team. We've got the Jags, obviously, who if they beat the Texans, then we're looking at the Jags. Like, they've got the tiebreaker of the Chiefs, who is a very good chance they're going to be in the wild card. The Jaguars look like a legit team. And then we've got the Bengals, who are treading, and the loss to the Bears really put a stinker on them. But if they can win and Joe Burrow comes back, they could go on a heater. So the AFC playoff picture is looking insane. There's a very good chance out of those 7 teams I listed that are locks, in my opinion, Ravens could be out, Chargers could be out, I guess the Chiefs could be out, and maybe the Bills. I mean, legitimately, the 3 best teams, in my opinion, the 3 most likely teams to win the Super Bowl could all miss the playoffs from the AFC. So it's insane in the AFC. Now, the NFC, I don't think the NFC is as good as the AFC. I think the AFC's clearly better at the top and in the middle level. Not at the bottom, who cares? But the NFC has a lot of interesting wild card situations. Now, here are my locks in terms of making the playoffs. I've got the Eagles. I think they're going to make the playoffs and win the division. I've got the Bucks. Bucks are going to win the division and make the playoffs. I've got the Rams, who might not win the division, but I'm pretty certain are going to make the playoffs. They would have to have an injury to Stafford, and I'm going to say that a lot, but barring massive injury to the quarterback, these Eagles, Bucks, Rams are going to make it. Rams might not win the division, but will probably make it. Packers, Lions, both will make it. I'd say if the Packers lose to the Eagles this week, and we're getting ready to talk about that game in a second, maybe you could see a world where, you know, you've got, what would that be, 4.5 losses, or would it be 3.5? I think it'd be 3.5 losses. Packers in a tight division with the Bears and with the Vikings. The Packers, if they lose this week to the Eagles, could be in a tricky spot. I still think they make it, and I think the Lions are locked. So those are 5 locks. I think everybody can agree with me on those. Now, we've got 2 NFC West teams, the Seahawks and the 49ers. Look, the Seahawks are looking good. A lot of people talk about the Seahawks as the creme de la creme of the NFC, the top team. I completely disagree. I don't think the Seahawks are that elite. I am putting them in the kind of middle zone, and when I say middle zone, to me, it's a coin flip if these teams make the playoffs. And inevitably, it can't be a coin flip because I've got 2 spots and I've got 6 teams. So it's not really a coin flip. It's going to be 33% of them make it. But regardless, the Hawks, I think, probably will make it. Pretty sure. I'd probably say 65%. The 49ers, I'm going to go 40%. Those 2 teams, you know, they're going to play, and that will definitely matter a lot for tiebreakers, potentially win the division. It's so weird how the 49ers, Seahawks, and Rams, any of them could win the division. I'm leaning Rams. Any of them could miss the playoffs. Any of them could make the wild card. So that's a crazy division. We got the Bears, who, depending on if the Packers go on a little bit of a stinker and lose to the Eagles and the Bears can upset them, the Bears could slip in over the Packers and be that second NFC North team. The Bears could also make the playoffs as that third AFC or NFC North team. So the Bears are a tricky team. That win over the Bengals was a big one. The Panthers, who have a lot of big tiebreakers over the Packers, over the Cowboys. And you know what? That point's kind of irrelevant because the Packers and the Cowboys both have a tie. So that win that the Panthers have over both those teams doesn't matter at all because there can't be a tiebreaker if a team has a tie unless they inevitably tie, and then that could get interesting. But the Panthers look hot, and they've got some wins over important teams. So the Panthers, I wouldn't be surprised if they make the playoffs. Then you've got the Cowboys, who are kind of on the outside looking in, but look, they just traded for Leonard Williams. Their offense is pretty electric. The Cowboys could go on a run and slip in at 9-7-1. And then you've got the Vikings, who, if they can beat the Ravens this week, which is a tall ask, but then the Vikings are right back into things. So honestly, the AFC, NFC, the playoff picture is looking crazy. There's a realistic shot that the Rams miss the playoffs as a whole, that the Packers miss the playoffs as a whole, that the Ravens miss the playoffs as a whole, and that the Chiefs do. And those might be 4 of the 8 best teams in the NFL. I mean, if I'm being honest. So we're going to get into some predictions, some picks, some who needs this game more. Falcons at Colts. Colts are -6.5 at home. Look, this is a big game for both teams. I didn't mention the Falcons as a possibility for making the playoffs. If they win this game, they're right back in the thick of things. Falcons, this is a do-or-die game. It's essentially a must-win game. If you really want to make the playoffs this year, you need to win this game. Indianapolis Colts, -6. If the Indianapolis Colts drop this game, now I know Sauce Gardner's kind of getting into the flow of things, but if the Indianapolis Colts lose back-to-back weeks, and I know the Steelers and Falcons aren't bad teams, but if they lose back-to-back weeks, go on the bye, and then lose to the Chiefs, this team is tanked. And that trade is a massive L. And I'll probably take Falcons +6. Jags versus Texans. This is a big game. Big game. 5-3 versus 3-5. Tiebreakers are going to come into the situation, especially if the Colts falter. One of these teams could win the division, but probably will be vying for playoff seeding in the wild card. Big game. Texans need this game. The Texans need this more than anyone, very similar to the Falcons, but Texans need this one big time. Division foe, a team that's got 2 games on you. This would be a very big win for the Texans. Pats at Bucks. This is a big one for the Pats. Look, if the Patriots are going to win this division and potentially get the 1 seed, they need to tread water and then beat the Bills. If they can tread water and then beat the Bills, they're probably golden. I think they lose this game. I think they lose to the Bills, and I think they end up going 10-7 and slipping in the playoffs. And the Buccaneers really don't have a lot of pressure on them. I mean, the Panthers maybe could catch them, but I don't think the Panthers catch them. Buccaneers might be sleeping at the wheel for this game. They're only -2.5. Ravens -3.5 at Vikings. Look, I think the Ravens get this one done. I think it's another statement-type game. It might be closer than the Dolphins. It probably will be closer than the Dolphins. But I think the Ravens get the job done. Vikings, if the Vikings are going to be a live team, and I just mentioned them, if Vikings get this win, they're looking pretty good. Eagles at Pack. This is a big one for the Packers. The Eagles could probably drop this one and be fine. The Packers need this game. The Packers need this game desperately. I'm leaning Eagles. I think the Eagles have the recipe to beat the Packers, but Packers might bounce back after a tough loss at home. I'm not sure, but this is a big one for the Packers. If the Packers lose this one, we're going to have some interesting conversations. Cardinals at Seahawks. I did not mention the Cardinals, very similar to the Falcons. You know, those are 2 teams that in a normal year were like, if they get hot, they could make the playoffs. They feel like they need to win out. Maybe drop 1 or 2 games. See, the Cardinals need this game. The Cardinals need this game big time. And in kind of a different way, but to the same degree, the Seahawks also need this one. Because if the Seahawks lose this one, then we're looking at, in a congested NFC West, we're looking at, are the Seahawks even going to make the playoffs? You know, we go from talking about them as a top 5 team to, are they even going to make the playoffs? So that's a big game for them. Rams at Niners. Massive game. Look, I just previously mentioned I think the Rams are going to win the division. If the Rams lose this one, it's a complete jumbled up mess. If the Cardinals win and then the 49ers win, I mean, who knows who's going to win this division? Who knows who's even going to make the playoffs? So that's a big game. 49ers need it. You know, they're 6-3. Rams are 6-2. If the Niners go to 6-4, it's looking tough to make the playoffs in that conference. Steelers at Chargers. This game, I guarantee you, will have playoff implications. One of these teams is going to be in a tiebreaker with the other. Both going to be 10-7. The winner of this game will probably make the playoffs. The loser will miss the playoffs. Massive game. You know, the Chargers, I don't know who needs this game more. I think the Chargers are a better team, so they probably could handle this loss better, but I think both teams need this win bigly, and I think they need it in a big fashion.